a statement on what I think of Mr.唐柏桥's attack. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to have this opportunity today to speak to you about what I think of the violent attack on Mr.唐柏桥in early July. As you all know, Mr.唐柏桥was a student leader during the 1989 democracy movement, and he exiled to the United States in the early 1990s. He was granted a political asylum and has been under the protection of the United States government. Since his arrival in the United States, Mr. Tan has been involved in many activities for Chinese democracy, and in recent years, he has been more active by founding the Federation for Peace and Democracy in China, and he has been working as House Speaker of the China interim government. Although Mr.唐柏桥and I do not agree on everything, I appreciate his passionate pursuit for China's democracy and freedom. Mr.唐柏桥has devoted much time and energy in supporting Falun Gong's anti-persecution campaign. Actually, he was one of the few pioneers in starting the distributing 9 commentaries on CCP, quitting the CCP campaign that was started a number of years ago. Due to the work of his and his colleagues, 57 million members of the Chinese Communist Party, Chinese Communist Youth League, and the Communist Red Scout have said goodbye to communism as of today. Mr. Tan's activities and his close association with the Falun Gong group arose the attention of the Communist Chinese government, and he has been closely followed. He received death threats a number of times, and he told me before that the Chinese government has been trying to have one of his arms or legs for tens of thousands of dollars. But Mr. Tan was never scared and has never given up his pursuit for his ideals. Instead, he became even more active in telling the truth about the Chinese Communist Party and communism. His weekly press conference as Speaker of the China interim government is now attracting more and more attention, both from China and from overseas. It is true that the CCP government has no means to stop Mr.唐柏桥from speaking out about what he thinks is right. But because this is America, a land of freedom, on which everybody has the right to speak freely. Therefore, it is probable that the CCP government felt that there was no other way but to resort to violence to prevent him from doing what he has been doing. Because the CCP believes that the final means to resolve anything is violence, and that the CCP has a long history of using violence to suppress dissident voices, not to mention that the CCP came to power by violence. I will give you some example of how the CCP government has been suppressing dissidents with violence in China. Mr. Gao Zhishen, a human rights lawyer who has been providing legal service to the persecuted Falun Gong practitioners, was tortured in 2007 in a way that is beyond description of words while he was under parole. Mr. Hu Jia, a human rights activist in Beijing, was also beaten on the street by plainclothes state security agents before his arrest and imprisonment in 2008. Mr. Sun Wenguang, a retired professor at Shandong University, was badly beaten by plainclothes police in April 2009 while he was on his way to the cemetery to mourn Zhao Ziyang, the former CCP leader who was sympathetic to the Tiananmen students in 1989. Dr. Liu Xiaobo, a literal critic as well as the author of Charter 08, was detained more than 7 months before he was formally arrested last month. In addition to human rights abuses within China, the CCP government has been infiltrating into overseas media and the Chinese communities and nurture hatred against Falun Gong practitioners and democracy activists. According to reports, in May last year, a number of Falun Gong practitioners were violently attacked on the street of Flushing, New York, by thugs hired by the Chinese government while they were peacefully distributing Falun Gong flyers. The violent attack on Mr.唐柏桥is nothing of a surprise. I'm sure that as long as China is still a country ruled by a dictatorship government, as long as the Chinese people have no freedom of speech and association, as long as the Falun Gong practitioners and house church members are subjected to persecution as a result of their belief, such violence shall persist in China as well as overseas. I call on the US government to defend freedom by bringing the perpetrators of this violent attack to justice. Thank you.